Hey, this is Steve with Davalab. Welcome to the course. I'll be your instructor and the guy responding to any comments or questions that you might have as you work your way through the lessons. The goal of this course is to give you a solid introduction to building skills for Amazon Alexa, and to do that in a way that makes sense even if you've never written a line of code before in your life. So there is absolutely no prior programming experience necessary. However, to make the best use of our time, I will assume that you're familiar with what Alexa is from a user's perspective and that you have just some basic computer skills. The course is broken down into a collection of short videos. Most of them are under 10 minutes, but a few are a bit longer. Also, for some topics, I'll be referencing related videos and resources that complement this course. And for those, I've included links in the course notes. Finally, all of my demos are going to be done on a Mac, but if you're using Windows or Linux, you should be able to follow along just fine. Okay, I'm sure you're ready to get started, so that's it for my introduction. In the next video, we'll take a look at how Alexa works from a technical perspective and discuss what you'll need to get started as an Alexa developer. The jumping off point for getting started with Alexa development is the Alexa Developer Portal, and it's located at developer.amazon.com/Alexa. To get started, you'll want to spend some time browsing through the public content there, and what you'll quickly learn is that Alexa is way more than just the brand and the brains behind the Amazon Echo. Alexa is also a service from Amazon that makes it possible for anybody to extend Alexa's capabilities or incorporate Alexa into smart devices. For developers, the Alexa service provides the Alexa Skills Kit and the Alexa Voice Service. The Skills Kit lets you add new capabilities to make Alexa smarter, and these are called skills. So if Alexa doesn't do something now that you'd like her to do, you can teach her how by creating a new skill. The Alexa Voice Service, on the other hand, is used for adding Alexa to new devices or software. So for example, if you wanted to create an Alexa-enabled toaster, you'd use the Alexa Voice Service to do that. Our topic is building skills, so we're going to talk more about the Alexa Skills Kit. The Skills Kit is a collection of resources to make it easy for developers to create skills for Alexa. And the Skills Kit includes documentation, software development kits, application programming interfaces, and example code. We'll be taking a look at all of these in more detail. Using the Skills Kit is free. In fact, in most cases, you won't need to pay to publish, build, or host your skills, and nothing that we're going to be doing in this course should cost you anything. At a high level, there are two things that you need to do to create skills. You need to create a voice user interface for users to interact with your skill, and you need to build a skill service that provides your skills functionality. The first part is done through the Alexa Developer Portal and doesn't require any coding, but it does require an understanding of how Alexa works from a technical perspective, and we'll be covering that. Building a skill service is a bit more technical and does require some coding. However, even if you've never coded anything before in your life, you can build a basic skill service using Amazon Web Services fairly easily. We'll talk more about building skill services in a minute, but first, let's take a closer look at the skill setup. Skill configuration settings and what's referred to as an interaction model tell the Amazon Alexa service about your skill, and this lets the Alexa service know how to recognize when users are requesting your skill and the functionality that it provides. New skills are set up through the Alexa Developer Portal at developer.amazon.com. And when you set up a new skill, you define how users enable and interact with it and how the Alexa service will communicate with your skill service to provide your skills functionality. The Developer Portal is also where you would submit your skill to be published in the Skills Store, and we'll talk more about the publishing process later on. Your skill service provides your skills functionality, and this is code that you'll write to take action on and to respond to user requests. Amazon doesn't care how you create your skill service. You can use any programming language and technology stack as long as it can properly communicate with the Alexa service. That said, the easiest way and the recommended way to build a skill service is by using Amazon Web Services or AWS, and that's what we'll be doing. So to wrap up, let me summarize how Alexa works with a custom skill. So first, a user speaks to an Echo or an Alexa-enabled device, and the audio is streamed from the device to the Amazon Alexa service. Next, the Alexa service converts the voice stream to text and determines if the request is for a skill by looking at skill configuration information that the developer sets up in the Alexa Developer Console. If the request is for a skill, the Alexa service sends the request to a skill service that the developer created to provide the skill's functionality. The skill service takes action on the request and generates a response that is sent back to the Alexa skill service through the Alexa Skills Kit API. From there, the Alexa service responds back to the user. Okay, so that's it for our high-level technical overview. In the next video, we're going to jump right in and create our first skill. Okay, now we're going to jump in and we're going to start building a skill, and we're going to take this process and break it into the next couple of lessons to provide a high-level overview of the process. You can step through this as I'm going through it if you want to do that, or you can just kind of watch the process to get a sense of what's going on. We'll be building a custom skill later on, but for this lesson and the next couple of lessons, we'll be just walking through one of the skill examples or the example skills that Amazon provides to just get familiar again with the setup process and kind of how everything is working. Like we talked about in the last lesson, there are really two main parts that a developer needs to worry about when they're setting up a skill. The first part is configuring the voice user interface, and the other part is providing the code or the functionality that is going to process and respond to requests that come in through that interface by users. And the first part of that, creating the voice user interface, is what we're going to take a look at in this lesson. And then we'll talk about the back end, which is the skill service, in the next lesson. So the starting point for setting up a skill is to go to developer.amazon.com and set up an Amazon developer account if you don't have one already. An Amazon developer account is free, so you don't have to pay for anything. You just sign up. I'm not going to walk through the sign up process just because it's pretty straightforward. The only point I'll make on the developer account is that you probably, if you have an Amazon Echo set up in you don't need to have an Echo to do Alexa development, but if you have one, you want to use the same email address with your Amazon developer account that you used for the account that you set your Echo up with. And the reason that you want to do that is because if you're using the same email address or same Amazon account for both your developer account and your Echo, then you'll be able to test your skills with your Echo, which is kind of cool, even while they're in development. You don't need to have an Echo to do Alexa development. So if you don't have one, no worries. There's a really nice test setup in here, so you don't have to have an Amazon Echo to do that. But if you do, then you want to use the same email address. Once you have signed up at developer.amazon.com, go ahead and log in. I'm already logged in. And then you would go to your Alexa consoles and then skills. And this is going to bring you to your list of skills. If you don't have any, then you'll see something like this. Mine is empty right now. And you're going to start by creating a skill. And you're going to provide a skill name, and we're going to call this one Space Facts. And again, this is an example skill that Amazon provides, and we're going to start with that to talk through what's going on. So I'm going to enter the name and then select the default language that the skill is going to use. And in my case, it's US English. You also have support for different dialects of English: Australian, Canadian, Indian, and UK English, and then German, Japanese, and French as well right now. And then you choose next. and you choose the model to add to your skill. And this is like the skill type. And we're going to be working with a custom skill type right here, which is the most flexible of these skill types. This is where you're going to get the most in terms of capabilities that you can provide as a developer. These other types provide sort of more specific functionality that's outside the scope of this course. We're going to be working with the custom skill. So you want to select that and then choose create. And this will bring you into the skill configuration area here. And there's a lot going on in here. We're going to talk through all this. It looks intimidating when you first get in here, but it's really not that bad once you go through it. At the high level, what you're doing here is you're providing information that is going to be used to train the Alexa service to recognize requests for your skill and for the functionality that your skill provides. And that's all done through instructions that are provided in what's referred to as an interaction model. And we'll go through that in more detail a bit later, but that's what's happening in this section here. The other big part of what we're going to do when we're setting up the skill is tell the skill how it's going to communicate with the skill service, which is the backend code that's actually going to provide the functionality. We're not going to talk about that in this lesson. We'll do that in the next lesson, but that's done in this interface. And then also from within here, you are able to test your skill, and we'll take a look at that after we get our skill fully set up. And you can provide information to get your skill certified and launched in the Alexa Skill Store here. And then once your skill is live, you can get metrics on its usage over here in the measure section. So we are going to set this up using a template, like I said, or some example code. And we're going to get that code from github.com. So if you go to github.com/Alexa, you'll want to find the sample node fact skill here. And in here, if you go to models, and then you're going to pick the language that is the right language for your skill. In my case, it's this English US. And then I'm going to just copy this. So just copy, and then we're going to go back over here and we're going to just paste it in here. So I'm at the JSON editor and I'm just pasting that in. So this is going to create the interaction model. We'll talk about this in a lot more detail later in the course, but for right now, we're just going over the high level steps. But the interaction model is what's used to train the Alexa service, the machine learning for the Alexa service, on how to recognize when your skill is being requested, which is done through this here, the invocation name, space facts, which we could also set through the graphical user interface here. So anything that's done in the graphical interface is really just editing or changing this this JSON here that you can also see in the JSON editor. And the intents, and which are what the functionality your skill provides, and then how that functionality is going to be asked for by the user. So utterances or samples here. And again, we'll go over this in more detail. But at this point, once we've got our model in there and saved, we can build the model. And building the model is what trains the machine learning that's part of Alexa. And so depending on how complex the model is, this can take a little while. So at this point, we've got our basic skill set up and the model building. And the next thing that we're going to need to do is tell the skill how it's going to communicate with our skill service. And we're going to do that in the next lesson. Now that we have our skill set up, the next thing that we need to do is we need to configure the endpoint. And the endpoint is going to tell the skill how to, or the Amazon service, how to contact and communicate with the code or the service that we're going to be creating to handle the requests that come in from users. And so at a high level, again, what's happening the flow, if you recall from the technical overview, a user speaks to an Alexa-enabled device. The device forwards the audio stream to the Alexa service. The Alexa service takes that audio stream and converts it to text, and then determines, based on the interaction model, what the user is requesting, or the machine learning determines what the user is requesting. And then if the request is for a skill, the request is sent from the Alexa service to a skill service. And the skill service is code that we're going to create as developers to process the requests that come from the Alexa service, and in turn respond back to the Alexa service with instructions or responses for how the Alexa service should respond back to the user. The important point here is just to know that everything is going through the Alexa service. So the requests coming in from the user are going first through the Alexa service, from the Alexa service to our skill service, and then from our skill service back to the Alexa service and back to the user. The skill service can be hosted by really any web server that can consume or understand the requests that are coming in, and they're just JSON requests. If you're not familiar with JSON, it's an acronym that stands for JavaScript Object Notation. This is JSON, actually. So it's a text format, and it is structured in a way that makes it easy for computers to work with. And because it's text, humans can see what's going on also. But basically, a message in this format goes back and forth between the Alexa service and the skill service. And so the endpoint here is configuring where the Alexa service is going to send those messages and where the Alexa service is going to get responses back from those messages. And in our example, we're going to use a service that's provided by Amazon Web Services called Lambda, AWS Lambda. And so we're going to select Lambda here, and then the AWS, Amazon Web Services, this is actually different from the developer, the Amazon Developer Council. So you're going to need two different accounts. You'll need one for the Amazon Developer Council, which we set up already, the Amazon Developer account, and then another for our Web Services account, Amazon Web Services account. And this one is, when you sign up, you will be prompted for a credit card, but there is a free tier. So even though you've got to provide a credit card, nothing that we're doing in this course is going to cost you anything. Again, we're using this Lambda service here, which provides 1 million free requests per month, which is way more than you're going to need for this course. So no worries about that, but you will need to provide a credit card. So I thought I'd mention that. I'm not going to walk through the sign up process here either, because it's pretty straightforward. But once you have an account, you would just go ahead and sign in. And you would go to the Lambda service. So if you just search for it here, it'll remember down there. And the Lambda service allows you to run code without setting up servers and managing servers and all of that stuff. So it's really great and simple to use for the most part. Lets you just focus on your code and not all of the infrastructure stuff that is not the main thing when it comes to writing code and creating services. Let's just jump in here and go through it. So the service, when you go in to create a Lambda function, you're going to create the code. You've got a couple of different options here. You can author a function from scratch, and we'll take a look at doing that later in the course. But you can also use blueprints or this serverless application repository. And these are like templates for setting up backend services that are hosted in Amazon Web Services. And that's what we're going to use for our example here. So if you select the serverless application repository and then just filter by Alexa, and the let's see, skills, how to, we are looking for the facts skills, this one right here. So the Alexa skills kit Node.js facts skill, and this is the one that provides a random fact, which is the back end to what we grabbed from GitHub in the last lesson. So we're going to go ahead and select that, and you can leave the defaults here, and then just choose deploy. And once it's deployed, I'll show you what we get here. It is still deploying, loading our resources. And there we go. All right, so now we can go over to the skill that was created, the Lambda function rather, that was created. And if we click on the Lambda function, we can see the code that was provided as a part of that template here. So this is JavaScript, the programming language here, Node.js. And when you create Lambda functions, you actually have the option of using a variety of different programming languages: C#, Go, Java, Python, and Node.js, which is a runtime environment for JavaScript, which is what we're using here. And so we'll talk more about the code a little bit later on, but you can just browse this and see kind of what's happening. This one again is an example that's going to give a random space fact. So one of the facts is a year on Mercury is just 88 days long. To make this work, this is important here, this trigger. So the Alexa skills kit, the Alexa service is not available in all regions. So if for whatever reason you run into issues here or you don't see the trigger added, you want to go up here and you want to make sure that you're in the, well, it doesn't need to be the US East region. The US East region does support the Alexa skills kit for sure. Not all of them do, a lot of them do. But if you have any question and you just want to get to a region that supports the skills kit for going through these steps, you can just select US East, because I know that one does. And then the Alexa skills kit is going to enable the Alexa service to call this function. And so we are going to now just need to configure our Alexa skill so that it can access this backend skill service. And we're going to do that by copying this up here, which is a unique identifier for this function that's called an ARN, or an Amazon resource name. So I'm just copying that, and then I'm going back to my developer console, so at developer.amazon.com, and to the service endpoint. And I am just going to paste that in, that endpoint, to that Lambda function. And if it's all in there, I can just save here. And it's saved. So at this point, I have a complete skill set up. I've got the skill set up in the developer console. I've got the interaction model in here that I copied and pasted from the example on GitHub. And then I saved the interaction model and I built it. And the build process is what trains the Alexa service to recognize a request for this skill, which is named SpaceFacts. And it will be invoked using that name also, SpaceFacts. And then we configured the skill to point to the skill service. And so now we can go ahead and test. And this is where we're going to leave off for this lesson. And then in the next lesson, we'll look at testing and talk a little bit about the testing process. Once you've got your skill completely set up, the next thing you'll want to do is start testing it. And like I mentioned earlier, if you have an Amazon Echo and you set up your developer account using the same email address that you set up with your Echo, you can start testing your skill using your echo by simply enabling the test right here. So when you do this, you're also enabling the skill under your account again, if you're using the same account that you used when you set up your echo, or the same email address. And if you don't have an echo, like I mentioned earlier, you don't need one, because this test simulator here, it provides everything that you need to test the skill. So we can use this just like we would use an echo. So we can say, Alexa, open space facts.
Here's your fact. Earth is the only planet not named after a god.
All right, and that pulled the fact from the skill service that we set up. And I can also test in here using, I could submit my input using text also. So like open space facts. Oops. Like this.
Here's your fact. The Milky Way galaxy will collide with the Andromeda galaxy in about 5 billion years.
Okay, so my skill's working right now. I want to just point out a couple of things here. So this JSON input and JSON output here, the input is the input that's going from the Alexa service to your skill service. In our case, that Lambda function that we just set up. So the Alexa service is generating this and sending this to the endpoint, and then our skill service, our Lambda function, is reading this, taking this in, and responding with this here, the JSON output. And this is what's going back and forth between the Alexa service and the skill service all the time. There's a JSON message, like I mentioned earlier, and the skill service is reading that message and acting on whatever the message is saying that the user wants and sending a response back. The one point here I want to make is really about when things don't go right when you're testing. So let me show you kind of a case where things aren't working. So right now everything worked, and we got a response back that the Alexa service could understand. But if you're having problems, you might not get enough information over here to know what's going on. So let's create a problem like that. So I'm going to go over to my here to my Lambda function, and I'm going to just modify this so that it generates an error that that the Alexa service will not know what to do with. So I'm going to change this to just making this change again, just to generate an error to illustrate a point. So now when I go back over here and I test, I'll say open space facts.
There was a problem with the requested skills response.
And so this time, because my skill service didn't respond with something that the Alexa service knew what to do with, the Alexa service is just telling me that there was a problem with the skill service, but the Alexa service doesn't know what the problem is. All the Alexa service knows is that it didn't get a message back that it knew what to do with. And so I just get a generic error message, which if you're getting that and you don't know how to go about figuring out what's going on, can be pretty frustrating. And so what we're going to want to do if something like that comes up, and we're not getting into, in this lesson, deep into the code and debugging and all of that stuff, but I want to touch on this because it's important, and we're going to need this as we start building our own custom skill. But what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to simulate the request that's coming from the Alexa service to the Lambda function, and use the debugging in Lambda to try to figure out what's going on. And to do that, it's pretty simple. You would just copy an example of the request that's coming from the Alexa service, which you can do by just copying the JSON input here. And then you want to take that over to your Lambda function, and there's actually a way to test right in here. So you can do this test here, configure test event, and I already configured this, so I'm going to do it again just to show you. You would just paste in, give your test a name, and I called this one, launch request. You can call it whatever you want. And then you would just save it in there. If I didn't already have this button would allow me to save. And then once you've saved your test, you can submit the test. And then when you submit the test, you will see the error message here with a lot more details. And actually you see it down here as well. So you can use this information to debug what's going on. And again, this lesson is not about debugging as much as it is just generally how you would approach testing Alexa skills. So we'll come back to this as we start modifying code a little bit later on. But we would go about debugging our skill service in the Lambda manager in the AWS console. And we could, from here, figure out, well, we know what's wrong with this because we created the error, but we could figure out more easily because we have information to figure out what's going on, and we can debug it there. And then when we go back, of course, it would be fixed, or we could retest it in here. So that is just a quick introduction to how you would go about testing. We're gonna need this as we're developing our skill, especially when things go wrong, which they will from time to time as you're building stuff. So you want to know how to go about debugging it. In the next lesson, we will dive into the code a little bit and look at modifying the code. And with this debugging lesson, we can do that hopefully confidently, because if something goes wrong, we'll know how to fix it. So we will jump in that next. Okay, now that our skill is set up and we know how to go about testing, we can take a look at the code and make some changes to our skill service code. So the code that we have here again is just an example that's provided by Amazon, and the example is written in JavaScript because we're using Node.js. And we're not going to dive deep into this right now, but I do want to point out a couple of things. So when you're in the Lambda editor here, there is a pretty nice code editor that you can use to edit this code, and you can expand it. And if you're working on more complex skills, you'll probably want to use a local code editor but for what we're doing, this is great. And you can see all of the code here, make changes to the code here, and the files that are associated with the code. In this case here, we've got, because this is Node.js, we've got some node modules that are included, and node modules are reusable code. And the notable one here is the Ask SDK, and the Ask is the Alexa Skills Kit SDK, and it is a module that makes working with the requests from the Alexa service really simple. So rather than having to write code to decipher what is in that JSON message that's coming over and to generate a JSON message going back, the Alexa Skills Kit SDK provides methods that make that really easy for us to do without writing a whole lot of code. And we'll talk about that more in a later lesson. But for right now, let's just look at making a couple of simple changes in here. And then I want to talk about the relationship between the code and the interaction model, because that's pretty important. So for starters, making a change that goes back to your user through the Alexa service is just a matter of making a change to your skill service. So in this case here, here's your fact. If I just change this to here's your cool fact and save it, save up here. Now if I go over and test here and just say open space facts,
Here's your cool fact. Despite being farther from the sun, Venus experiences higher temperatures than Mercury.
So the change that I made is immediately available for the user. So any changes that you make in your skill service, the Alexa service is going to use whatever the skill service sends back, and provided that the response is a format that it can use, it will be good to go. The part that is a little bit more involved is figuring out what the Alexa service is sending over and mapping what the user wants to a code function that can handle it. And that is done through the interaction model. And so I'm going to talk through what's going on in a little bit more detail in the interaction model and how that relates to the code. And then we'll in the next lesson, we'll go through some examples of using that. But first, I just want to talk through it. So the interaction model, like I explained earlier, is it's basically instructions for training the machine learning that is behind Alexa so that it can understand requests from a user that are requests for your skill and functionality that your skill provides. So in the interaction model, and I'm just looking at the JSON editor here, which you can create the entire interaction model just in code, like through the JSON editor, like this. The key pieces that you want to understand are first the invocation name, and we set up the invocation name through the visual editor, or actually, well, we copied and pasted this in, but the invocation name is the name that the user is going to use to invoke or start the skill. And then in addition to starting the skill will provide functionality, and functionality is referred to as intents, or requested functionality is identified and referenced as intents. It's a better way to say it, I think. So an intent is what your skill can do, and it maps to what the user wants, and what the user wants or is requesting is derived from utterances, the things that a user says. And so we provide, along with intents, we provide samples of things that a user might say to tell Alexa how to recognize when the user wants something specifically that our skill provides. And there are two kinds of intents. There are custom intents, and that is what this get new fact intent is. And then there's also built-in intents. And built-in intents, we can add. Some of them are required, like these ones are required. But built-in intents are default functionality that is part of the Alexa service. And so, for example, the ones that we're looking at here, like the cancel intent, recognizes when a user is wanting to cancel a session with a skill. And help is pretty self-explanatory, but is going to recognize when a user is asking for help within a skill. And so these built-in intents here are kind of ready to go. You don't have to provide utterances for them. In some cases, you can extend their capabilities with additional utterances, but it depends on the intent. And there's lots of different built-in intents. In fact, take a look at that real quick. So there is a library of lots of different intents, from types of musics and artists, and all kinds of things. So Alexa can recognize lots of different things that a user would say, even without you having to train it how to do that. And so the next part of this, though, is how the intent maps to functionality that's provided by the skill service. So at the high level flow, we've got a case where a user is going to open up a skill without providing any other information other than the fact that they want to open the skill. And we did that in the test here when we said open space facts. And in that case there, the message that was sent over was, let's do that.
Here's your cool fact. Jupiter has the shortest day of all the planets.
Okay, so in this case here, all we did was ask the Alexa service to invoke the space facts skill. In this next example, I'm going to ask for a fact. And this is...
Here's your cool fact. A year on Mercury is just 88 days long.
So in the example of this skill, it's pretty tough to see the difference because the response that we get back is the same. We get a random fact no matter what we do. But if you look at the request here, so in the first case, the request that came in to the skill service, if you look at it, is a launch request. And this is how our skill service knows that this was a case where the user was just opening the skill up and not doing anything else. In this example here, the request came in, but I asked space facts for a fact, and the Alexa service recognized that in this case, the request was for a specific intent, and that intent was the intent called get new fact intent. And the way that the Alexa service was able to determine that this utterance was for this intent is because of the samples that were provided. And so if we go back over here and look at our get fact intent, you can see the samples in here. And so the utterance, the things that users say are going to provide the information that the Alexa service needs to determine what it is that the user wants. In a really simple case, the utterance is just going to map to an intent, and it will be enough information to tell the Alexa service and our skill service to execute whatever code is going to handle that intent. In some cases, however, intents need additional information from the user before they can be fulfilled. So this get new fact intent isn't an example of one, but let's say we had a skill where a user could order a pizza. In that case, we would need to know the size of the pizza, the toppings, the delivery information, and the parameters, size, topping, those things are referred to as slots. So slots are parameter values that we need to fulfill intents that are extracted from an utterance. And we'll get into this in more detail later on. So this is just kind of high level talking through these pieces. And so minimally, you will have a launch request where all the service knows is that the user is invoking your skill. You can have a launch request that includes an utterance that would not just tell the Alexa service that you're trying to launch a skill, but it would also provide information to map the request to an intent. And then in some cases, you'll have intents that require additional information to be fulfilled. And that is information that is held in parameters called slots. And then the other point on slots is you can provide slot information as part of an utterance and a launch. So if I had an intent that was to order a pizza, I might say, and let's pretend my invocation name is, pizza skill. I could say, Alexa, tell pizza skill I want to order a pizza, and that might map to my order intent. But my order intent might need to know what toppings I need. So if I didn't provide any slot that would be filled for toppings, the intent would respond with, okay, what kind of toppings would you like? But the user might also say, Alexa, ask pizza skill to order a pizza with pepperoni on it. And in that case, I'm getting an utterance that is not just mapping to the intent, but also providing information to fill the slot. And again, we're going to come back to this because we're going to use it as an example. So right now, I just wanted to talk through it. And that information, slot being the intent being requested and the slot information is all going to get passed as a part of the request, and we're going to need to handle that as it comes into our skill service. And the Alexa SDK is going to help us do that. We're going to go into that and walk through an example of creating an intent that has a slot and passing that slot information over to our skill service and responding in the next lesson. So in the last lesson, we talked about intents, slots, and utterances. Now let's take a look at actually using them in our skill service code. And we're going to start with the interaction model. So we're going to create a new intent in here, and then we're going to wire it up so that we can respond to the intent in our skill service. So I'm going to create a simple custom intent called the hello intent. And I'm going to add some sample utterances. I'm going to start with just hi and hello. So when a user says hi or hello, I want this intent to be the intent that responds. So I'm going to save that for right now. And I'm going to start this model building. We're going to come back and we're going to test in just a minute here. But while this is building, let's take a look at our skill service code. So I'm going to use this SpaceFacts skill that we've been working with and hack it up a little bit here, but I can use this as a starting point because it has the Alexa Skills Kit SDK and some sample code that we can work with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just copy and paste for starters. So I'm going to copy this handler that was set up to get a random fact, and I'm going to change the name of it to the hello handler. And the first part of this code, what it's doing is it's taking in the JSON that is being sent over by the Alexa service. That's this handler input value here. And then that is down in this next line here, that is being used, or a piece of that object is being used, or an object from within that object. The request object is being used here is this constant named request, and we're going to keep that. But this next piece here is saying to use this handler when the request type is a launch request, which we don't want to do. We're already doing that down here for the get new fact, and we'll leave that the way that it is for right now. But what we will change here is what happens when this intent is requested by the user. And so we're going to get rid of this stuff here because we don't need that anymore, and we're going to change this. For now, we're just going to say hello like that. And we're going to get rid of this also. This is writing back a card in the Alexa companion app, and we don't need that for this example. Okay, so now we've got a handler that is going to look at the input that's coming in from the Alexa service, and if the input request is an intent request and the intent name is not get new fact, we want to change this to something different. We'll call it the hello intent because that's what we named it. Okay, so this all looks right. All we need to do now is come down to the bottom here where this section that says exports handler, and then add request handlers, and we need to add this new request handler that we created in here, just like that. And then we can save it. And so now if we look at the code and just step through it again, what's going to happen when the request comes over is this handler is going to look to see if the intent request is named hello intent. And if it is, then this is going to respond with just hello, really simple right now. So let's go back over here to our developer console and oops, I logged out. Log back in and let's test this out. So tell space, oops, tell space facts hello.
Hello.
So it worked. So let's look at the input here. So the JSON that was sent over to the skill service from the Alexa service, you can see here in the request section here, the type of the request was an intent request, and the intent name is hello intent, and the interaction model is what was used to generate this. We created the interaction model so that the Alexa service could understand that when a user says hello, that we want the hello intent to handle that. And so when this gets sent over to our skill service over here, our skill service code now is able to recognize that and respond back with hello. So that is the, those are the steps for setting up the interaction model and then handling the request in the skill service. Now let's take a look at what we would do to pass a slot value over to our skill service. And the steps pretty similar. So we want to go back to our interaction model again, and we want to go to the slot that we just set up, our hello intent slot. And now we want to also include, not a slot, but an intent, our hello intent, and we want to add a slot to it. So I'm going to say my name is, and then in curly braces, add the name of a slot that I want to use as a placeholder for a value. So I'm adding that right into my utterance. So my utterance is my name is, and then curly braces name. And when you do that, you'll see down here, the slot with the name gets added. And then you just need to set a type for the slot. And there is a slot type for names, specifically first names. And I think there's also surnames, or last names. But I'm going to use, for this example, Amazon.us first name here. So now this built-in slot can recognize first names and pull those out of the utterance. So I am good to go here. So I'm going to save that, and I'm going to build the model here. Okay. And while that's building, actually, I'm not going to change the code until this is done building, because I want to show you something in the intent request first that we're going to use to know what to code in our skill service. And this is kind of a pretty common way, that, at least that I do it. So once I make changes to the interaction model, I'll generally test first to see what the intent request is going to look like, and then just make sure that the Alexa service is doing what it's supposed to be doing with the user utterance. So I'm going to go over here and just test this out. So tell space facts my name is Steve.
Hello.
And let's make sure that it works. So what I'm doing to make sure that it works is I'm looking at the JSON input, and this again is what the Alexa service generates to send over to the skill service. And if I come down here into the request, I can see that the hello intent is the intent that I'm wanting, and that my utterance here with my slot in it is also being recognized here. So I can see now there's a new slot section down here, and then the name is the name of the slot, and the value is Steve. And that's what I'm looking for when I'm testing. Now what I want to do is I want to respond back and use that value. So I'll say like hello Steve, or whatever the value of the slot is when it comes over. And to do that, I'm going to go back over to my skill code here, and I'm just going to say respond back with, so the input handler here is the object that's going to include everything that's in the JSON request. So I can sort of navigate this object by looking at the JSON that's coming over. So right now I can see in the request object, I've got intent and slots, and then name or value, name here, and then value here. So I want intent, slots, name, and value to get this. So back over here, I can go request.intent, name.value. Slots, right? Slots.name.value. And then if I save this, let me just double check. So request intent slots name value, and just confirm over here intent request intent slots name value. Okay, so now if I test this again, my name is Steve.
Hello, Steve.
Okay, so this time the response is using the value that was sent over for the slot. And so just to recap what we did here, so we set up the interaction model with the intent, and we added a slot to the intent, and we included the slot parameter as part of the utterance, so that when the user makes a request to the Alexa service can identify what intent the user wants, and also extract the value of the slot, in this case name, so that it can be passed over to the skill service. And then once we pass it over to the skill service, or the Alexa service passes it to the skill service, we can use it in our skill as part of the response. And this was a really simple example. In a more complete example, we would do things like check for slots that aren't filled, and if they aren't filled and we need the value, then we might respond back by prompting the user with a prompt to the user for the slot value, things like that. But for right now, we just wanted to step through the process of using slots and setting up intents and using them in our code. In the next lesson, we're going to step it up a bit, and we're going to look at coding using a local editor and the Alexa Skills Kit command line interface. And so up to this point, we've been doing everything in the browser, which is fine for what we've been doing and fine for simple skills. But as you get to building more involved skills, it becomes harder and harder to work in the web editor. So we're going to take a look at a local editor and talk about the Alexa Skills Kit command line interface next. We've done through the browser. We set up our skills at developer.amazon.com through the browser, and we set up our skills service through AWS and Lambda, also using a browser. And being able to do everything in the browser is really nice. However, as you get more serious about building skills, you're also going to want to know how to build skills from your local computer. And that is what we're going to talk about in this lesson. And to do this, there's some software that you're going to want to have, and I'm going to talk about the software that I use and sort of your minimal requirements, and then we'll look at it a little bit and move on from there. So First, you're going to want to have a code editor, and there are lots of options here, and there's not necessarily a right or a wrong choice. As long as you can edit text and code, it will work. The one that I use and am going to be using for the rest of the course in the demos is one called Visual Studio Code, and it's free, it's open source, and it's available for Mac, Windows, and Linux. It is supported and provided by Microsoft, so the documentation and support is really, really good, which is one of the things that I like, and there's a great community around it, so there's all kinds of plugins and themes and all kinds of good stuff. So I like this one a lot. Like I said before, I mean, there's lots and lots of editors out there, so this is certainly not the only one, but the one that I'll be using for the rest of the course and my preference. This is Visual Studio Code here, and one of the things that I like about Visual Studio Code is that it has an integrated terminal. So the command line. If you're a Mac person, then you might be used to this, and this is the same thing. So the commands that I can run here, I can run down here, and that is integrated into Visual Studio Code. And the terminal also works if you're a Windows user and you use the Windows command line. You would have access to the command line here. And this is important because a lot of what we'll be doing and what you'll be doing as you're building skills will involve using the command line, because the other tool that you're going to want to have is the Alexa Skills Kit command line interface, or the Ask CLI. And the Ask CLI is a tool, a utility that allows you to create, manage, and deploy Alexa skills. And that means everything that we've done through the web browser can be done from the command line, as long as you have the Ask CLI. And so let me show you what I mean. So here, I've got the Alexa Skills Kit CLI installed, and I'm not going to walk through installing and configuring the software in this course, but I'll leave a link out. If you go to dabblelab.com/learn, I'll leave a link there to a tutorial that I did that walks through setting up and configuring your local environment. So the Alexa Skills Kit command line interface mainly. And again, I'm not going to walk through that here. So as I'm going in and doing this stuff, I've already gone through and set it up and configured it with permissions that allow the CLI to push my skills out to my Alexa console and also to AWS. But with the Alexa Skills Kit CLI installed, I can go ask new, and this will prompt me for the name of a skill if I want to create one. And let's say I want to create one called Hello World. It's going to create a skill project, which is this folder over here. And in the skill project, I have everything that I need to deploy and create a skill. Both the skill configuration information for the Alexa Developer Console, and also the Lambda function. And so here's the Lambda code there. When I did this ask new, it provides some boilerplate code. When you do that, it's sort of like a hello world skill. And I'm not going to go through the code yet. I'm going to do that in the next lesson. But let me show you, just by doing this, how easy it is to deploy the code from your local computer out to the Alexa Skills Console and Lambda. So you would just, from the directory that you're working in, you would go ask deploy like that. And now what the Ask CLI is doing is packaging up the skill, deploying it out to developer.amazon.com first, building the interaction model next, and then last it is pushing the Lambda function out to AWS. And so this takes a minute for this to happen, but what you'll note here is that everything is done from the command line. I don't have to go and log in through the web browser at all to do this once it's set up and configured. And that is a huge benefit just in your workflow as you're making changes to skills and republishing them and testing them. And you can actually also test from the command line here as well. But let me go out and just show you what happened. We'll start in the developer console. Just by doing that now, if I refresh, now there's my Hello World skill that was just created using the Ask CLI. And if I go out to aws.lambda or aws.amazon.com to my Lambda, you can see that there is also a Lambda function that was created for my skill service. And I could edit these here because all of the code is here, and I could edit the skill over here just like we did in the earlier lessons, but I don't need to do that anymore because I can make all of the changes that I want to make locally. I can edit the code here, and I can edit the information as well. Again, in the next lesson, I'll go through and kind of walk through what's going on in here. And then I can just do deploy again, and all of my changes will be deployed. So it's a much better workflow as you start working on especially more complex skills and making changes. And so that, again, is what I'm going to be using going forward. In the next lesson, I'm going to spend a little bit of time going through this code here to get you familiar with what's going on. And then I'm also going to show you how to get some sample code that you can work with to start understanding and building your own skills from. So that we will talk about in the next lesson. Okay, we're going to pick up where we left off, and we're going to take a look at the code that the Ask CLI creates and how we can modify that code to make changes that we push out to Lambda and to the Alexa Developer Console. So ask new, when we ran that command, we got our Hello World skill. And if you look in the skill project, this folder here, you've got a few things here. You've got a folder called Lambda, and this is where all of the Lambda code is in this custom folder here. And so if we looked at the Lambda function in AWS, actually let's do that. We go over here and let's go to our functions here. And this is the new one that was deployed. If we look in here, you can see the files and the node modules and all of the things that are here get deployed out to here. And so that is what's in this the Lambda custom folder here. And then the interaction model, which is in the developer console. Let's refresh this. So in here, so the interaction model here is this here. So we can change we can add intents and slots and all of the things that we've looked at previously, change the invocation name. The default invocation name for this is greeter. So we can change all of that here. And then last is the skill manifest, or the configuration information, which is this skill.json file. And this file contains settings for all of the additional information that you would have about a skill. So things like the public name and the description, keywords, all of that can be added to that skill.json file. And you can use that to make all of your changes. So you don't need to log into the developer console through the browser to make changes, or you don't need to log into AWS to make changes to your Lambda function. So it makes your, again, your workflow just a whole lot better. Let's make a couple of changes just so we can take a look. I'll just make a really simple change here. So the default name is hello-world, which is the name that I gave it when we set it up. And I'm going to just get rid of the hyphen. I'll just say, and capitalize these, so hello world like this, so small change. Of course, I could go through and edit the description, testing instructions, example phrases, all of that, but just to illustrate the point, I'm not going to do that. And then the interaction model, change it to my greeter, and I'll save that. And the Lambda function, we'll just make a change to this. It says, when we opened it up, it was welcome to the Alexa Skills Kit. You can say hello, and I'm going to just change this to welcome to the course. You can say hello. So I'll save that. And so we just made a few simple changes, and now I'm going to go down here and do ask deploy again. And it's going to go through the same steps. It's going to deploy the skill information first, and then it's going to build the interaction model next. And this takes a little while, building the interaction model, just like when we do that through the developer console through the web browser. That takes a minute, and that's what's going on right now. And then once that's done, the last thing is it's going to deploy the Lambda code out to AWS. And once that's done, we can go test it. You can actually test right from the command line too. We're going to go into the web browser just so we can see the changes. It's almost done here, I think. Okay, so now let's take a look. So now if we go out here and refresh this, we can see the change that I made to the name. Just remove the hyphen, not a big change. And then also if I go over here to build and look at the invocation name, you can see that it's changed now from greeter to my greeter. And then the last piece, we'll see if this is finished deploying. It is. So we'll go over here and we'll test it and see if we get our new greeting. So we'll just say open my greeter.
Welcome to the course. You can say hello.
So there's our change. So you can see the workflow for making changes and updates when you're working with the Ask CLI and doing everything locally is just really, really simple. And that's what we're going to be using going forward. I want to show you a couple of other things about the Ask CLI, specifically how you can use templates. So the default, when you do the ask new command, the default template is that hello world template, or the greeter template, which is like a hello world template. But if you do ask new and then -- template, there are some other templates that are available from Amazon that you can use as a starting point too. So this buttons, color changer template, city guide, decision tree, fact, which is the space facts template that we looked at previously, RSS feed, news feed template, and then high-low game, how to, pet match, quiz. So there's a bunch of them here that you can use as starting points, and we're going to take a look at a couple of those in the next lesson, and we're going to look at modifying a couple of templates so that they work as a really good starting point. Let's, for right now, just take a look at the fact one because we looked at that before, so we'll see what happens. Oh, you know what I did? I didn't move out of my... When I created this, I was still in the Hello World folder. Do that again. And we'll use fact. Okay. Let's delete this. And this is our space facts. So the code in this one is actually a little bit different than the default code that you get when you use the blueprint, or we didn't use the blueprint, but the repository version. But you can make the changes here again and deploy this if you want to do that. The other thing that I want to show you is you can also get templates from other locations. So if you do ask new -- template, the default templates are going to come from Amazon, but you can also get templates from other locations, and one of those is skilltemplates.com. So https skilltemplates.com/templates.json, like that. And these are templates that I created, actually. And so it's a list of just basic starter templates that you can use to get going. So like the basic starter one is really similar to the default one that Amazon provides, with the main difference being the configuration information. So in the skill.json, it's got all of the configuration information, so that when you deploy this, by just changing this JSON here, you're ready to submit the skill for certification. You would just want to use your own images, of course, and keywords, and change all this, where the default hello world one doesn't have all of the settings in here, and so you end up having to go dig through the documentation to get the settings, but those are all provided by this one. And there's some other templates. What we're going to do in the next lesson is we're going to look at diving into one of the templates, modifying the template, and then deploying the template. So that is coming up next. So at this point, we've covered everything that you need to know for the most part to get your first skill up and running based on a template. And what we're going to do in this lesson is recap and walk through all of the steps. And I'm also going to talk about how you would go about beta testing skills, and also discuss the process of getting the skill certified if you want to develop a skill that's going to be public. So we're going to start with the Alexa Skills Kit CLI, and I'm going to use the ask new, and we're going to use a template. And there is a template that Amazon provides called Team Lookup. And this is like a company directory skill. And so we're going to use that one for our example here. And so after you select the template that you want to work with, and most of the templates provide, if you look, there's like a README file, and you can go preview like this to read about the template, and there's instructions for setting the template up and all of that good stuff. The things that you're going to want to do, you're going to want to modify the Lambda code. And the goal of this course was to not get into the coding part so much. So we are in the code, of course, here, but we're not really writing code so much as just finding the pieces that need to be edited if you're working with a template. And with this template and most of the templates, they're very well documented. So you can read the comments and sort of navigate your way through what needs to be done. And between the comments in the code and the README file, you should be able to navigate easily through this. But in this template, the Team Lookup template, there is most of what you're going to need to do is just change the references to the people. So they've got the development team and the Alexa team in here, and you can copy and paste and change this to add your own team members in here. And then further down, there's like the skill name. You can change that, and you can change the welcome messages, and pretty much anything that you see that's in quotes is something you can change. And then I think they say, yeah, so this comment here, so caution, editing anything below this line might break your skill. So if you're not comfortable coding yet, you can just avoid changing any of this stuff down here. if you are comfortable coding or you want to start learning that, templates are great because all of the code is provided in all the templates, and so you can come and look through the code here to get familiar with what's going on. And if you want to build your own skill, you can either build it directly based on a template or use some of the code in the template to build your own custom skill. So a lot of times they, for me, will act as a reference, you know, so you can see how one skill does something and then use that in the skill that you're creating. So once you've modified the Lambda code, the next thing that you would do is modify the model here. So assuming that you're not making any major code changes, all you would need to modify in the model is just the invocation name. So the name that you're gonna use or the user is gonna use to start the skill up. And then the last thing is the skill.json here. So this is all of the setting information that's going to be used in the Alexa Developer Console. So this is going to provide the name of the skill here, and you can change that, and the description, the example phrases. So you're going to want to go through and edit all this. You're probably going to want to provide your own icons, and so you would use 108 by 108 is the small icon, 108 pixels by 108, and then the large icon is 512 by 512. So you would want to provide a URL to the icons that you're going to use for your skill. And then at this point, once you've modified everything, then you would just deploy it. So you would move into the team lookup folder. And just do ask deploy. Like that. And the CLI is pushing the skill out to the developer console and then building the interaction model, which takes a minute. And then it's also going to deploy the Lambda function. And while that's happening, let me show you one other resource that you might want to use. If you go to alexa.amazon.com and log in, this is going to provide you with the equivalent of what you get in the Alexa or in the Alexa companion app for the Amazon Echo. So if you've got an Amazon Echo and you've installed the app for iOS or for Android, this is going to provide the same kind of functionality. So this is where you would go and search for and enable skills, and also on the home screen where you would see any cards. So if in a skill you can write back information to the companion app using cards, and you can see this is a card that was written back earlier when we were working with the Hello World skill. And so if you want to test that, you can use the alexa.amazon.com to do that. The other thing worth pointing out in here, so if you're wondering if a name that you want to use for a skill has already been used, you can search here for skills and find similar skills if you're trying to get inspiration, or if you're trying to make something that's a little bit different and wondering if somebody's already built it. And then over here, your skills, this is going to be a list of skills that you have enabled. And then you'll see under dev skills, any skills that are in development. And so like, here's our team lookup skill here. And I would bet by now this is all deployed, and it is. Okay. So the next thing that we would do once the skill is deployed, then we're ready to invite some beta testers. And then once we get the beta testing process done and we've gotten the feedback that we need, then we're ready to deploy it to the public skill store, or maybe you just want to deploy it as a company skill, and I'll show you how to do that. So you're going to do that from in the developer console here. So once you've deployed the skill, you can go back into the developer console, and here you would go to edit for our team lookup. And then you're going to go to, so we test ourselves while we're in development, but then we also want to beta test. And to do that, we would go to launch here. and provide all of the details for the skill. And this is the stuff that we provided inside the alexa.json file. So here's like the reference to the image that are provided. We would change those, of course. The only thing that is not provided, at least in this one, is the privacy policy URLs, because these are going to be the URLs that would point to your privacy policy, of course. So I'm going to do mine. And also to your terms and conditions. So these are required. You need these if you're going to publish the skill. So you'll need something out there. And then save and continue. And then there's some questions about that you need to answer for the certification process. Does the skill allow users to make purchases or spend money? You want to go through and answer all these and provide any testing instructions, that if there are any special instructions that you would want the testers to know. And then save and continue. And then the last step here is to choose how you want to publish the skill. And so you can publish it publicly in the skill store, and this would make it available for anybody to enable. You can publish it for just your organization. You would need to have Alexa for Business set up to do that. Or you can use the beta test option here. And so to beta test, you provide your email and you're going to be the administrator. So whatever your email is. And then down here, you would provide a list of email addresses for each one of the beta testers. And you can upload a list in a CSV format, or you can enter individual email addresses separated by a semicolon, and you can have up to 500 of those. The email address needs to be an email address that corresponds with an Amazon account that is associated with either an Amazon developer account or one that's used for an Amazon Echo. And then the user or the beta tester is going to get an email, and in the email there's a link that they can use to enable the skill. And when they enable the skill, it will show up in their skill list as a skill that's in development also. So these are some skills I was invited to test, which is why they're showing up. And so if you got an invitation once your users get an invitation, then they would be able to test the skill using their Amazon Echo, even while it's in development, before it's publicly available, just like you can test it as the developer. So that is the process for configuring the skill start to finish, or using the template, and then configuring it for beta testing. And once you're done with the beta testing, at this point, you just save and continue to submit the skill for, if you wanted to go public, to submit the skill for certification. And the certification process is pretty quick. It's like a couple of days at the most usually. And if the skill, if there's a problem with certification, the response back that you get is very detailed in my experience. So they'll tell you exactly why, if it fails certification, why it failed, and what you need to do to resolve that. And yeah, so that is it. At this point, again, you have everything that you need to get your first skill up and running based on a template. And that is where we're going to wrap up. In the next video, I'm just going to do a high-level recap and talk about some resources and some things, as kind of next steps that you might want to take a look at, or that you might be interested in. Congratulations, you've completed the course. You should now have a solid introductory level understanding of how to build custom Alexa skills, and hopefully you're pretty close to having your first skill completed. From here, you'll want to practice what you've learned so far and then move on to some more advanced topics. And here are some suggestions for possible next steps. First, head over to dabblelab.com/learn. There you'll find links to all of the resources that I mentioned in this course, and you can also subscribe to get notified when this course is updated or when I publish a new course. I am planning on publishing more advanced courses, so hopefully if you liked this one and you want to dive deeper, You'll want to check those out too. Also, Alexa is constantly evolving, and as a result, this course will have revisions. So by subscribing, I'll let you know when those updates happen. Next, you'll want to check out the Dabblelab YouTube channel at youtube.com/dabblelab. There you'll find over 50 Alexa development tutorials that complement this course. You'll also want to go to github.com/Alexa to learn more about the Alexa SDK for Node. And while you're there, start digging through some of the code for the sample skills that Amazon provides. And we've also created some sample code starter templates that you can use, and you'll find those at skilltemplates.com. Well, that's it. I really hope that you enjoyed the course, but I also hope that you'll let me know if there is anything that you think I can do to make it better. Finally, if you have any questions about anything that I've covered, don't hesitate to leave a comment and I'll respond just as quickly as possible. Hey, thanks again for taking the course. I hope to see you in a future course.